Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Round Two podcast. I am Nikki, and I am really excited because this is my first guest in a new series that we're starting here called Entrepreneurship Tips. So I have a really cool list of entrepreneurs lined up to come and join me. And we're going to hear a lot of great stories about entrepreneurship journeys, what made people take the plunge into entrepreneurship, how it's going or how it went, what they're doing now, and any tips that they have to share with all of us. Um, I'm excited for my guest this week. I know I'm always excited for my guests because I have such wonderful people in my life. But my guest this week, we go back a long way. I was fortunate enough to work alongside of him when I was 26 years old, so 20 years ago. And since then, so many crazy things have happened business-wise for both of us. But I think the story you're about to hear is really exciting. So I want to welcome the CEO of Bay Equity, Brett McGovern.
All right. Thanks, Nikki. Happy to
Yeah,
be here. I've
being
got
here.
plenty of mistakes to share with everybody, so it's going to be good.
So why don't you start off by just sharing a little bit about your background and what you were doing when you finally decided that entrepreneurship was the crazy life for you?
Okay. Yeah, I just thought I'd share, when I was in high school, I was with my dad and I met one of his friends, this kind of business acquaintance that he had. And it was this kind of like tall guy, had a family, and he had an HR company that he ran, that he was like CEO and owner of. And he probably had 100 employees, something like that. And I just got exposed to this guy and I was like, you know what? That's like the coolest thing that I've heard of. Is this
Yeah.
guy started a company. He's, I think they were having like a company picnic or something. And I just said, you know what? That is super cool. This guy's kind of controlling his own destiny. It's his own boss. Uh, so that kind of planted a seed for me that might be something I wanted to go after. And then I went to UC Davis and got in the Sacramento Entrepreneurship Academy that you've been through.
Hmm.
And that was kind of a follow on to that. It was a program for seniors at Sac State and UC Davis. And I saw a flyer for that on campus and it just kind of connected it. Hey, I could go to this thing on Saturdays my senior year and get exposed to other entrepreneurs and learn what that was all about.
That's so
Uh,
cool. Where were the classes being held when you went through the program?
they were at like that old Tower Records operation that they had in West Sac. Like if
Oh,
you're
okay.
going, you go over the causeway from Davis towards Sacramento, and it was on the right side over there.
Okay.
I think Tower Records eventually went down, but
Yeah.
yeah, we had our classes there, and it was every Saturday from 8 to 1, and
Hmm.
uh, nobody else was really doing that. But that kind of further exposed me to, as they said in the academy, every entrepreneur has their own gestation period for when they can pull off starting their own company.
Yeah.
Uh, but that was a great way to just get exposure and a framework for what it all looked like, how to raise money, all the legal issues, and all that stuff. So great program, and that's where I met your dad, Jim Corbett, who
Yeah.
founded the Entrepreneurship Academy, and he and I became instant friends, and we're golf buddies over the years, and so yeah, it was just neat to meet him and get kind of that relationship set with him, which eventually became a much bigger one later on.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I'll just take you through the thing. So I graduated from Davis, went into commercial real estate, sold lease office buildings downtown, almost started my own firm at one point, which would have been a huge mistake. I was going to call it Big Red Realty.
Oh, that's a
Uh,
great name though.
yeah. And I was going to like represent tenants in San Francisco and have my
Uh-huh.
own gig going on. This is probably 6 or 7 years into doing that. And I'm glad that
Okay.
never happened. I kind of
Yeah.
decided instead of doing that, I joined another firm and then eventually joined the mortgage business in 2004,
Hmm.
which you and I met shortly thereafter, working
Yeah.
for Washington Mutual. And so from '04 to '07, learned the mortgage business. My brothers were in it and a couple of my best friends. And so the mortgage meltdown started in 2007.
Yeah, it did.
And we thought there was a big opportunity because of the meltdown, because subprime was going away.
Hmm.
And so it would be like A paper, just the best qualified borrowers, and then nothing else because of the mortgage meltdown. So we thought something had to replace the void of nothing else. And so
Yeah.
we thought we'd write a business plan. And I called Jim. First call was to your dad.
Really?
Said Jim, I got an idea. I've had ideas in the past, but this one I
Yeah.
think is going to potentially stick. Will you help me uh, get this thing together, write a business plan? He introduced me to Steve Orlando,
Okay.
who I'll talk about later, who
Uh-huh.
was pretty instrumental. And so we wrote a business plan, picked a name, raised $1,750,000 from friends and family,
Wow.
based on the original business plan, to fill that void that we thought was going to be there because of the mortgage meltdown.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so
That's
raised the
really
money.
incredible to think that you raised that much just from friends and family. And I mean, it must have been a really good business plan in order to get that kind of capital.
I think people bet on people instead of the plan. I mean, the
Hmm.
plan has to check out and be something viable and I think exciting. But most of the people invested with us were close to us, that
Hmm.
believed in us, and that turned out to be, I think, very true in our experience. That it
Hmm.
really wasn't the plan; it was the people and the team and our
Yeah.
ability to adapt.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you've heard my dad say this a million times over the last 30 years, but he's always said people like to do business with people they like.
Totally, totally. And in my case, it was my two brothers, my best friend, an operations guy that I knew, his kind of sidekick, and so
Hmm.
yeah. Anyway, so founded the company in June of '07, right in the middle of the mortgage crisis, and the business plan basically didn't survive like 3 months. Uh,
Okay.
the business model that we had set out for us basically collapsed amidst the meltdown, and
Hmm.
the only mortgages anybody could do were, the cleanest A paper best
Yeah.
borrowers that existed out there. So we had to get a new plan. We worked like 10 hours a day to figure it out. Uh, we did figure out that we would just go to that kind of cleanest loan out there because we had
Hmm.
operations talent, we had sales talent. So we knew we had something here, but we needed a loan to sell. So we kind of migrated to just the cleanest A paper possible. And it took us 11 months from June of '07 until May of '08 to fund our first loan and make
Wow.
our first dollar of revenue. So that was a tremendously trying time in the middle of a global financial crisis,
Yeah.
with none of us making any money, running through our savings, not taking salaries, working 10 hours a day trying to. The big thing was we needed to find a line of credit.
Yep.
We could fund the loans, and then once we funded them, we needed somebody to buy the loans. That's kind of the business
Okay.
model.
Uh-huh.
So the balance sheet actually got down to a mil. So we raised $1,750,000,
Uh-huh.
and we just had expenses. And I think we took salaries for like a month, and then decided, oh, wait a minute,
That'll go
we shouldn't
quick.
be doing this. Protect the balance sheet. So the
Right.
balance sheet got down to 1,000,001
Uh-huh.
from 1,750,000, and and in May of '08 we funded our first one, and that was on the heels of getting a line of credit
Uh-huh.
from a local bank
Okay.
that we could use to fund loans. And there's a funny moment. We had talked to like 50 community banks, and nobody, it's in this. Remember back to that time, nobody was giving. The warehouse lines had all run for the hills. No one was giving any lines of credit to fund
Yeah.
any loan unless you had a really long track record. So we
Right.
found Bridge Bank in San Jose was the only bank out of like 50 that would entertain this concept of, we'll pledge our 1,000,001 to your bank. You give us a line
Uh-huh.
of credit. We use that line of credit to fund loans, and then we'll sell them and replenish the line of credit. And
Okay.
Your dad Jim was in this meeting, and we kind of commenced the meeting, gave him our presentation. Had been turned down like 49 times, and so we thought it went really well. And your dad ended up going around the conference table and gave the credit manager of this bank a hug.
Oh,
And
really?
what is he? What's going on? No one else is giving anybody hugs. They gave this woman a hug, and they ended up approving us for this line of credit
Oh my
that
God,
we
that's
start using to
amazing.
fund loans. So it was a huge. I mean, we had later had a guy work for us who tried to start a company just like ours at the exact same time and
Uh-huh.
couldn't get a warehouse line or a line of credit to fund loans and ended
Oh
up
my gosh.
like not getting it started and ended up working for us later. So we were super lucky. It took tons of effort and like never quit and keep calling and
Yeah.
we had no choice but to make it work. And so
That
we
is
got lucky.
amazing that he got up and gave her a hug. I kind of love that so much.
It's your dad though. You can see him doing that, right?
I can. It's just great. It's just too much, but I love it. I love it. Oh, so
Uh,
what do you feel like was, I know there's so much more to this story, but just as that initial leap from working for, doing the commercial real estate side of things, going into wholesale lending, working for these big nationwide companies, what aside from, the massive market crash that made the WAMU side of things go away, but what was it that made you feel like, okay, now's the time? Like there were potentially other career paths you could have chosen, other things that, you could have done. You had a successful career in two different things where I'm sure you were very hireable. What made you decide that this was the right time?
I think I saw the mortgage meltdown coming. I mean, we all did. It was obvious
Mhm.
that this thing was happening, and there was a company called Quality Home Loans that was kind of
Okay.
like a hard money lender gone mainstream. They were doing wholesale lending, but it was
Uh-huh.
basically hard money loans. And we figured out the CEO of Quality Home Loans, who was based in Agora, California, paid himself $16 million in 2006.
Wow.
And they were funding loans on warehouse lines and selling those loans to Countrywide.
Okay.
They kind of had the whole system set up, and the operations guy that I founded the company with knew the buyer of those loans at Countrywide.
Okay.
So we figured let's replicate their business model. It's obviously doing very well. We
Yeah.
knew where to sell the loans. We thought we could get a line of credit, and that that was in like April, May of '07, and then we
Okay.
raised the money, wrote the business plan, and then about August or September of '07, that Countrywide buyer, their bid went from like paying like 4 points to buy the loans, so it'd be like 104.
Uh-huh.
We called them, and he said the new bid is like 98 or 96. So
Oh,
they weren't even paying par. You'd have to pay them to buy the loans.
yeah.
And then it just went from there, just totally disintegrated as things fell apart. So
Okay.
that whole business model that we raised the money on just totally collapsed, basically, and we had to figure out what to do. But we knew we had the like sales talent because my brothers and I and a couple of my friends knew the
Mhm.
wholesale lending game. We had
Yeah.
operational talent that was partnered up with us that we knew could like use warehouse lines and underwrite loans and fund loans and sell them in the
Mhm.
secondary market. So we knew we had the team, and so we just kind of took a leap. I think that's what it takes. You just got to take a leap of faith,
Mhm.
sometimes and bet on yourself,
Yeah.
and hopefully things will work out. I know a lot of times they don't. We got tremendously lucky in a lot of ways, but just kept grinding. So
No, that's awesome. I mean, I think that, luck, there are certainly things in life where luck plays a role and it's only luck. But I also really believe that whole mantra that, luck is where preparation meets opportunity. And I think that, with all of the work that you all had already done, plus how hard you were working to figure something out and put together the right business plan and with the financial model and knowing the steps that you needed to get figured out in order for it to be successful and just kept working towards those, probably added to your luck factor.
yeah, I mean we've done it for 16 years now, ongoing.
Yeah.
So we don't have nearly enough time to talk about all the trials and tribulations and near misses and near death experiences, and I can tell you a couple of stories, but it definitely was not even with the dedication, the hard work, and all that stuff. It was always in doubt um,
Mhm.
the whole way. So it's not easy at all.
Yeah.
So
Definitely not. So as you guys got into the A-paper side of things and you funded that first loan, you had the warehouse line, you were able to, were you selling all of the loans? Was it an immediate turnaround, or how did that work at the beginning?
Yeah. So at the beginning, we also got lucky because Citi approved us to sell them loans with no track record. And
Hmm.
Citi was the only investor buying loans in 2 days.
Oh, wow.
So we could fund on this little tiny line of credit that we had from Bridge Bank
Uh-huh.
and then sell it to Citi in 2 days, which would replenish the line of credit. So
Oh,
we were
great.
able to fund a lot of loans and sell them quickly and replenish the line and fund another one. And it was just super lucky scenario where they were just buying the loans so fast.
Okay.
And then in like September of '08, Wachovia gave us our first normal warehouse line, which we
Okay.
used to fund the loans.
So I was going to ask, what was the original warehouse line of credit, and how much of a blessing was it to have Citi buying them within 2 days so you could keep the pipe churning?
we couldn't have done it without it.
Okay.
And then later, a year later, because they were funding loans so fast and weren't reviewing them well enough, they literally stopped buying loans for like 8 days.
Oh no.
And oh yeah, and like totally redid all their processes and the way they were doing things. And just before that happened, we got approved with Wells Fargo and B of A to sell them loans.
Oh, great.
So just as this thing was growing,
Uh-huh.
like there were little moments of time where we were selling every loan to Citi. We knew we needed more investors. We got 2 additional investors right when Citi stopped buying
Perfect.
loans, and we just pivoted over the other ones. But
Yeah.
the crazy thing was we did 6 million in loan volume, which is nothing, in November of '08, and it
Okay.
was looking pretty sketchy. Our
Uh-huh.
balance sheet had gone down to 1,000,001.
Uh-huh.
We were funding loans. We were trying to squeak out a profit, but we did 6 million in November of '08. And Casey and I, my brother, were on the treadmill at the Elks Lodge in San Francisco in the basement,
Uh-huh.
which was like $20 a month to go to the Elks Lodge in the basement of this hotel and
Okay.
Kensington Hotel. And we're on the treadmill watching TV, and Obama in November of '08 came on the TV and basically asked the whole country to refinance their home
Oh my
as a
God.
stimulus for people to lower their monthly payments and get in a
Uh-huh.
better financial position. And so it was like 7 a.m. and we're watching this on the TV and we just went, this can't be. And they shot rates down. Fed funds rate went to zero.
Yeah.
Rates came way down. And
Oh my
so
gosh.
uh, we ended up making 50,000 in net profit in '08. We just kind of squeaked through,
Oh.
and we needed to have had audited financials, and the auditor questioned whether we were a going concern or not.
Oh
And
wow. Okay.
I'd never heard that term before,
I've
going
never heard it
concern.
either. So I was just gonna say, what does that mean?
So that if your financials get audited and you're not a going concern, that basically means there's like not very good likelihood you're going to make it or continue
Oh,
operating successfully.
okay.
If they had made that judgment, we would have probably lost our warehouse line, our credit facility, and
Oh
it would have been.
wow.
So we convinced them that we were a going concern, and we made 50,000, and then uh, rates came down. Obama asked everybody to refi, and we did 100 million in volume in April of 2009.
Oh my gosh. So just 6 months later, boom.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's like gangbusters. We had like I think we had 25 people in a 2,000 square foot office space at 251 Kearney.
Uh-huh.
Like I was sharing the office with 2 people. One guy's cube had a microwave underneath his desk. It's just mayhem. But we were just funding as many loans as we could
Yeah.
and trying to scale it up. So
I love it.
that was pretty crazy. A
Yeah.
pretty crazy time. Um, so we're rolling now. We're going concern. We started our retail sales channel. So
Mhm.
we had actually loan officers that would go straight to the public
Mhm.
to provide them loans instead of before we were a wholesale lender, we'd go to mortgage brokers and have them give us their loans and we would fund them and sell them into the secondary market. So started retail. We actually exited the other founder of the company. He had some issues, had to file bankruptcy and some other things. And so we had to figure out how to get him out, bought his shares back,
Mhm.
separated with him. That was pretty traumatic
Oh, I
time
bet.
period. And then in 2011, the industry just went crazy. It was like rates were low. They
Mhm.
increased the loan limits
Yeah,
for
I
loans, and
remember that. That was when I was buying my first house.
so the whole industry filled up with capacity,
Mhm.
and we only had so much warehouse line funding that we could use to fund loans, and then they
Mhm.
would stay on those lines until we sold them to
Okay.
whatever investor. And so the investors went from buying the loans in like 5 or 6 days, so you can replenish your funding source and fund more loans. To they went to
Mhm.
go like to 40 days to buy a loan.
Oh,
We were
okay.
we were so busy that our
Uh-huh.
warehouse lines were all full of loans we had funded, and you need to sell those to get them off the lines to free up more capacity to fund more loans. So
Right.
so we had all these loans locked. We had all these people trying to get their loan funded, and we would come into the office every day. This is in like the fall of 2011.
Mhm.
Basically, our controller would say, "You can fund 6 loans today."
Oh, dang. That's
Like
it?
a hundred wanted to fund, and we could fund like 6 a day,
Oh, shoot.
because that we would come in and see how many had been sold to
Yeah.
the investors, which would replenish the line. So
Sure.
uh, that was tough. And uh, our biggest line at that point, Wachovia had turned into Wells Fargo.
Uh-huh.
And so we were having a board meeting in San Francisco with your dad and Steve Orlando, our two outside board directors, and
Mhm.
uh, we got the call that Wells had turned off, it suspended our warehouse line,
Oh,
so we
no.
couldn't
Why?
fund any loans on the line because we had so many funded, and we weren't able to sell them quickly because the banks were
Oh.
so
Uh-huh.
full that they just couldn't buy loans quickly. So
Yeah.
uh, we were having a board meeting, and that made it. We were only able to fund like 6 a day.
Uh-huh.
This is like pouring gas on the fire. We were
Gee.
like, now we were barely going to fund any a day.
Uh-huh.
So we called this kind of legend in our business, Ken Logan, who ran the Wells Fargo warehouse line. We called him, and he was in his camper at a Georgia football game on a Friday afternoon,
Mhm.
tailgating,
Oh,
kind of like working, but he was going to tailgate. And then he
sure.
was a big Georgia football guy.
Yeah.
So we're all in the conference room with Jim and Steve and my brothers and I, and we basically just said, "You guys have just shut off our warehouse line. We're only able to fund a few loans a day. This could put us out of business.
Yeah.
What can we do?" Uh, so he did not have much sympathy for us.
Oh, no.
We kind of gotten ourselves in this situation.
Okay.
So it took us like 3 weeks. We did a plan on the spot with Steve, submitted it to them. Took like 3 weeks to get the line back on,
Uh-huh.
and then we finally the bank started buying the loans a little quicker, and we finally got ourselves out of it. But it was like
Oh, gosh.
this close to the whole thing just unraveling. It was as stressful as any
Understand.
circumstance I've ever been in. Yeah, it was just brutal.
Wow. That's crazy. I had no idea about that. So then as time went on, you guys ended up growing out into other states and adding on more retail branches. So how were those decisions initially made to continue the growth and scalability?
We hired Sue Melnick in 2012,
Mhm.
and she came in, and we were a mess. Our big joke was John, my brother, two brothers, and I all at one point were running operations for the company.
Uh-huh.
And that was a really bad thing.
Yeah.
Nobody, we shouldn't have been running operations for the mortgage bank.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so Sue came in and fixed everything, got the trains all run on time
Uh-huh.
from a compliance standpoint, operations standpoint, and I'd say we've always said she's the MVP of our company. I mean, once she settled that down, where we knew loans could fund on time
Yeah.
and effectively, and people could predict the process. That
Mhm.
meant everything. So that allowed us to go to good salespeople and say, "Hey, we've got a good operation here. We can fund your loans on time." So uh,
Yeah.
we got our first really good group in San Diego in September of 2013. Big retail group down there. They're like AAA rated, best in the business type of folks.
Hmm.
And then in January of 2014, landed another group like that in Grand Junction, Colorado.
Okay.
And then over the next like 18 months, there was a company called W.J. Bradley based in Colorado that was having all kinds of trouble and basically was failing and going down. And they had a big operation, bigger than ours.
Okay.
So we were able to kind of network into their sales, their regional managers,
Uh-huh.
and one by one took their regions into our company. So
Oh, perfect.
I think it was Chicago and then or Illinois and then like uh, the Front Range of Colorado and then Arizona. And so and at the same time, we were developing our Pacific Northwest group. And so
Hmm.
uh, over those few years, we just accumulated all these great salespeople um, and scaled it up and had a good year in 2016. And as we grew, we had raised subordinated debt. We had raised equity. I mean, we had all these kind of like to bolster our balance sheet, like
Sure.
pretty creative ways to put capital on the balance sheet, which Jim and Steve Orlando were hugely helpful in helping us figure out how to add that money to the balance sheet so we could fund more loans, so we could make more profits, so we could grow and get bigger.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, so we just kept growing. Had a good 2016. 2018 was a really tough year
Hmm.
in the business, and then COVID hit. This is way fast forward. COVID hit
Yeah.
in
But you
20.
said fast forward, but we're already in 2024. Like COVID hit 4 years ago, which it seems like it was 4 weeks ago in some regard. It's like, wait a minute, we've already lived 4 years post that crazy first couple of weeks, you know?
It was nuts for us.
Yeah.
Everybody was shut down in America, and a lot of businesses were suffering, and uh, the rates came way down because of
Yeah,
the
they did.
troubles going on. So 2020 ended up being the best year ever in mortgage banking,
Really, that's wild.
at
Well,
least in
because
the last.
everybody was moving and refinancing. I mean,
Yeah.
the amount of people that fled, the amount of people that fled so many major cities. I remember I was selling some bar stools that I had, and this couple came through. They'd been living in San Francisco. They were both in tech. They had been in a one-bedroom apartment. They said that they were paying like, $6,500 a month for. And then, they'd been sent home for months and they finally were like, well, what are we doing? We're sitting on top of each other, working in our one bedroom apartment that we're paying $1 million for. So they ended up buying acreage in Auburn. And they said that their mortgage for the multiple acres they had purchased was the same as their rent. So they were like making it a big old compound out there and had a big house and were just loving life.
Yeah, big migration to like the country or the mountains or uh but you're right, everybody refied because rates came
Mhm.
down to like historic lows of basically
Yeah.
around 3%. You get a
Yeah.
30-year fixed mortgage for like 3%.
Yes. I got
So
one.
yeah, so everybody refied, a lot of people moved, markets were on fire, and so 2020 was the best year ever. And we had done all this work over all these years to really be ready to
Hmm.
capitalize in the biggest way possible.
Nice.
So we crushed it in 2020, and then 2021
So wait,
was the
how much
second.
money in loans did you guys fund that year in 2020?
I think about 10 billion in loans that year.
Dang. 10
Yeah,
billion? That's just an unfathomable number.
I think we went from like 5.5 billion to 10,
Wow.
and I think we funded about 8.5 or 9 in 2021.
Wow.
So 2021 was the second best year ever in the
Yeah.
mortgage or in the last decades. Uh, and then you could tell that inflation and the pressure on rates was about to happen, and
Hmm.
we knew just the pendulum had swung to almost everybody in America refied to get a 3 or 4% 30-year fixed mortgage.
Uh-huh.
So you knew the business was going to be very tough
Yep.
because the pendulum was going to have to swing back, and there wouldn't be any refis left, especially when rates went up, because everybody would be
Yeah.
locked in at these low, which is part of the problem with the real estate market today is everybody has. If you have a 3% 30-year fixed,
Yeah.
you don't want to sell your house because you're going to go get a 7% 30-year
Right.
fixed wherever you move to, and so
Exactly.
affordability is really
I mean,
tough
the
thing.
amount of that exact conversation that I've had with so many people, it's just, it doesn't even matter what price point you're at in the market. You could be a $400,000 buyer, or you could be a $1.4 million buyer. And the conversation is the same, because the mortgage would be so much more than double, triple what you currently have.
It's a problem.
Yeah.
So we kind of saw that coming, and we were approached in basically October of 21 by Redfin, or by an investment banker that represented Redfin,
Mm-hmm.
that they were looking to buy a mortgage company. They had tried to do their own.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't work out, so they were going to buy somebody. And so we said, heck yeah, we'll talk to them, because
Yeah.
we knew not only was there tougher times coming, but if we could hook up with Redfin, who had 45 million unique visitors every month to their website, and all these
Right.
realtors all over the country, and it'd be an incredible referral source for our sales force.
Absolutely.
So we started talking to them in the fall of 2021
Uh-huh.
and closed the deal April 1st, 2022.
I remember that
And
day well.
then I know, and then so that was a great day. And
Yeah.
then that month, the bond market basically collapsed, and rates rose faster than they had in 40 years, and everything grinded to a halt. And so we've spent the last 22 months or so working. We're still working as Bay Equity, as an
Mm-hmm.
independent company, but we're owned by Redfin,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and so we're half of our pipeline now are Redfin customer referrals. We're finding more and more ways to integrate with them and get customers out of them. So it's
Well,
been
that's
great
good.
for our company. We've saved lots of jobs.
Yeah.
It's been great for the salespeople. We're doing about half their business is Redfin referrals,
Well,
and
that's
so
great. I mean, that's huge, considering, every day, even now. I mean, it's kind of common maybe to see companies restructuring or doing a riff at the beginning of a year, but to the fact that it's like the middle of March or past the middle of March now, and we're still seeing these riffs coming through, on a daily and weekly basis, it's great to feel like you're, on the positive side of that, and not having to make big reductions in headcount.
yeah, we just had a major competitor called Academy
Hmm.
Mortgage, who was a little, just tiny bit bigger than us, had a lot more salespeople than us.
Hmm.
They just sold to Guild,
Okay.
so they weren't going to make it. So I think the mortgage industry is definitely changing, and there's tons of consolidation happening, and
Hmm.
companies that are kind of in that middle market segment are going to have a tough time. And so we're insulated because we have all these customer referrals from Redfin, which makes it amazing for us. But there's a lot of pain and agony, and people are losing money, and
Yeah.
consolidating and getting purchased, and it's it's probably at its worst right now.
Yeah.
We got a little bit of rate relief, and it looked like it was going to get a little better, but I don't think rates are going to come down anytime soon in any dramatic way. So it's going to
Yeah.
be a tough slog for mortgage for a few years.
I know I saw a realtor talking about, this was back at, like, I think it was like the end of January, and she made a comment about how they were projecting, which I'm also curious, who's they, and how are they creating these projections, but it was talking about that rates would be down to like 5.5 by like the end of Q4. And I thought, that still isn't that great, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I guess depending on like where you are and what you're coming from, but for, like you said earlier, those of us who locked in at a 3%, or in some cases less. I think I had a friend who refied down to 2.5 on a 15-year.
Mm-hmm.
And those people, they're not going to go and trade that in for 5.5.
Right. I think 5.5 would make the business profitable again,
Mm-hmm.
and it would make it so mortgage banks could survive, and because there'd be some normal, probably less than normal, but some, like last 18 months, we've only done, of all the loans we've done, only 4% are refis.
Okay. Well, that
And
tells you something. Yeah.
before that, the least that ever was 20% refis.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay. That's
they've
huge.
almost all but dried up. And so I think if it went down to 5.5, you'd have enough refis to have a normal, mix of business. And it definitely won't be gangbusters. There's not no refi boom coming. but it would at least make the business more normal than hardly having any refis at all. So
Sure. So in 2020, when you had that massive year, what percent of that $10 billion that was funded was refis?
like 55%.
Wow. Wow.
That's when
Amazing.
mortgage banks make their profits, or when refis are hitting.
Uh-huh.
So
Wow. That's wild. So what a journey you just kind of shared with all of that. I mean, you got to a point one time where you had said it was 2013, and I was like, that was only in that point of the story was only 2013, like, and then you sold in 2022, like that's wild.
yeah, we had somebody say, "Oh, you guys, amazing what you did so quickly."
Right.
I'm like, "When no, not at all. It's been like 15 years of blood, sweat, and tears, and near
Right.
misses, and I mean, we've done it all. We've had founders leave, and capital crisis, and
Mm-hmm.
regulatory burdens, and just on and on and on and on and on. So
Yeah, I
uh,
think it's always interesting. One of the things that I say often when I'm like either like coaching young people or even to myself is that, when people are having a sense of like trepidation towards doing something new or giving something a try, I always remind them of like at the end of the day, like nobody cares about you as much as you care about you. And nobody's thinking about you as much as you might think that they are. And nobody's paying attention to your life as much as you're paying attention to your life. I mean,
mhm.
I was even having this conversation with my brother a couple of weeks ago. And I said, even our own mom and dad, they're not thinking about us like to the extent that we're sitting thinking about us every night when we go to bed. So I'm saying that because it's funny that you said that somebody said to you, wow, that happened so fast. And you're like, dude, you didn't live through that. What do you mean it happened fast? It looked like it happened fast because you're not paying attention to me every single day.
If that's fast, I don't want to know what takes a long time, because
Yeah, right? Oh my gosh, that's so funny. So, if you had the ability to go back to 2007 you today and tell him something, what's the one thing that you would tell him?
I think I would say this is going to be really hard.
Mhm.
It was harder than we could have imagined. We kind of went in. Uh, what's the term? It's like going. You didn't even know what you didn't know.
Oh
There were
yeah.
things out there that we had no idea
Uh-huh.
that were going to come at us, and that's why you just bet on the people. And you just can't give
Yeah.
up. You got to have good people around you. I think I knew this back then, but you really, if I was going to give somebody a tip, get some experienced people, not necessarily in your business, but just advisors around you
Mhm.
that have been there, done that know aspects of finance, and people that can help you, because we leaned on Jim and Steve a ton,
Yeah.
especially during the hard times.
Yeah.
And
I
it
bet.
just, I don't know if we would have made it without those guys.
Aw, that's
So yeah,
sweet to
it's
say.
a huge deal. So I would tell people, if you're going to try to start a business or some sort of venture, get some people around you that you trust, that can help guide you, and
Okay.
open access to helpful financing sources, or
Mhm.
inroads into sales opportunities, or
Mhm.
uh, don't try and do it alone, because it's not. I mean, it's more fun to do it with great people too. So
Yeah, the wins are a little sweeter, right?
big time. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. So
So
then what would be your like, I mean, I know you just kind of gave a handful of tips, but if you had to say like, okay, this is my like entrepreneurship tip, like taking everything in consideration that you've been through and learned your whole career, what would be your entrepreneurship tip to share?
I do a couple. I'd say a couple things. One, try and hire really good people, and
Mhm.
then let them do their jobs, and don't micromanage them. I know that's kind of like a something, you read that in a business book or something, but it's
Mhm.
really true. We've been able to, for our company, hire people that run, finance and credit, and
Mhm.
technology and marketing and operations and compliance, that just know what they're doing.
Yes.
And so there's no reason to like get in their way. And then that, I think, is a lot more fulfilling for them to be able to run a
Right.
show, run their show. And of course you got controls, and you talk to them all the time, but I
Yeah,
think that's really, really important management style that's worked well for us.
absolutely. There's nothing that's less enjoyable than feeling like you're being micromanaged when you were hired to do a job that you're qualified to do.
I'd also say be transparent about how things are going
Hmm.
and ask for help. I think that was something even in the toughest times. If we were just honest about, with our warehouse lines, if things were going really poorly, you had to be out in front of it, talk to the bank.
Yeah.
Here's what's coming down the line, even if it's ugly. I
Hmm.
just want you to know and have a heads up so they're never blindsided.
Yeah.
If you have banking partners or any constituents that need to know bad news before you either have to report it or it becomes public.
Hmm.
That really was a big deal to us. We created incredible relationships with the banks we worked with because we were always way out in front of it. They never were surprised. I mean,
That's huge.
and then I'd last thing I'd say, find industry influencers and make them advocates for you.
Oh, uh-huh.
We've got this whole cast of characters that are kind of like well-known mortgage industry guys that just happen to live in the Bay Area, which was lucky
Uh-huh.
for us. But Casey and I become good friends with these folks, and they've got a lot of influence. They've got a lot of reach. They've got a lot of great advice. Over the years, they've helped direct us. Like one thing was go away from wholesale towards retail
Oh,
as far as
uh-huh.
the sales channel goes, and we had an important advisor, tell us that's where the value of your company would be if you had distributed retail sales force around the country.
Oh, that's
So we
huge.
really worked hard to build that up and de-emphasized and even closed our wholesale sales division down in 2015 because it just it was creating a drag on resources
Uh-huh.
and it turned out to be like, I think it was 10% of our loan volume. Uh, but it was like a 30% resource suck on the company
Hmm.
to do that 10%. And I think it was like 0% of our profit. So we just
Yeah.
took a look and said, why are we doing this?
Right.
It's causing our people to be distracted from what we had gotten pretty good at, which was
Hmm.
bringing retail salespeople on and doing loans directly for the public.
No, that's great.
So,
That's such good, reflection and really taking a look at, hey, this isn't making us any money or this isn't working. Or, I think having the pulse on your employee base and understanding like what is causing them stress and if that is not a value add, then like getting rid of it. Like, why are we doing this then? If this is just stressing you out, we don't need to do it anymore. So
especially if it's not bringing value to the company, it's
totally.
like it was just checked every box of it took some courage to shut it down.
Hmm.
But that advisor who we'd become really good friends with,
Hmm.
who was sort of like a industry, they did industry peer analysis, and they sort of knew what the highest ground was
Yeah.
for a mortgage bank. And so he helped push us in that direction, which ended up, the reason Redfin bought us is because we had great customer reviews.
Hmm.
We're a retail mortgage bank with loan officers all around the country and local markets. We had the highest customer rating on Redfin's customer ratings
Oh, that's
page
cool.
of all the lenders. We were
Uh-huh.
right at the top.
Okay.
So they said, who should we talk to? And they said, well, let's go and look at the
Let's look
companies
at
that
our
have the
data.
best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is so cool that they even that they had that they were tracking that type of data because then it almost made it probably easier for them to do research onto
Exactly.
who they could potentially partner with. So
Exactly.
cool.
Yeah.
Well,
Crazy, crazy stuff.
what a journey. So now that you're almost it's about almost exactly 2 years post,
Mhm.
I guess would you say acquisition? Is that the right
Yeah.
word?
Yeah.
So 2 years post acquisition and kind of still uncertain market, but maybe seeing some relief towards the end of the year. How has your day to day changed since April 1st, 2022?
Uh, not a ton different. We have this fun thing that we can try and figure out a bit more ways to get Redfin customers over
Hmm.
to our salespeople. And that's been something nobody else is able to have that sort of outlet like we do. So
Sure.
that's been
Yeah.
really fun to work on. And we're really close with many, many of our people. We have
Hmm.
really long tenured both operations and sales people
Yeah.
in the company who've been here a long time. So it's kind of like a big family, and uh, the Redfin thing's really helped us get through this downturn,
I
especially
bet.
protecting. We've had layoffs for sure, but we've protected a ton of jobs,
Hmm.
and the salespeople have had this. Half their loans for a lot of them have been Redfin referrals, so
Oh,
it's
cool.
really helped like get us through this nightmarish time period for mortgage companies.
Yeah.
So it's great. I mean, it's different not owning it, versus working
Yeah.
for
I
a big
bet.
entity. Those guys, the Redfin guys, are fantastic. They're when we talked about potentially doing a sale, we figured out we had the same lawyer in Washington D.C.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh. What are the
so
odds
that
of that?
there's some really well known firms and specialists that do this stuff, but this woman back in D.C. had us, and she had Redfin, and she said the culture match when she first heard we were talking to them. Said
Hmm.
she couldn't imagine a better culture match. It was like two of her best friends were going out on a date,
Oh my gosh. Well, that's great.
and that's really turned out to be true. They're great people to work with, and I don't know if it's because we're both West Coast or
Yeah.
what, but they're easygoing, and they know we're doing the best we can, and so it's been good. I think it's been as good as you could get acquired, have a buyer that can give you half your pipeline
Hmm.
and be great to work with, and we feel responsibility to make sure this thing's a success.
Yeah.
The legacy of Bay Equity, and
Absolutely.
not only for the Bay people, but for the Redfin folks that believed in us and bet
Sure.
on us. So it's great. It's
Well,
I just hopefully rates will come down a little bit and it'll get even more fun.
yeah. Well, I love it. That's so exciting. I mean, obviously, like I knew some parts of that story, given that, my dad was so entrenched in it all with you guys, but I certainly didn't know all of the details that you shared. So thanks for coming on and sharing your story. And I'm sure that, there's definitely more fun for you guys down the road, just in different forms and different ways of learning. But I think that's really awesome. So thank you for being here and talking to everyone.
Yeah, it's fun to finally get on here, Nikki, and kudos to you for doing this. It's awesome.
Well,
Love
thanks.
it.
Well, I hope to, like I said, got a lot of really great entrepreneurs lined up to come in and talk. And so I'm excited about all of that. So thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. See ya.